Elena heard it first from her aunt. She was 9 years old, standing in the doorway of the sitting room in her Sunday dress, waiting for someone to notice her. Her aunt looked up, scanned her from head to toe, and turned back to the television. She's not beautiful like other girls of her age. She can't stand in front. She said that the way you say the weather is cloudy. No malice, just a fact. Elena walked back to her room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall. She didn't pry. She just stored it, the way children store things they don't yet have words for. And over the years, more people added to that storage. A teacher who always picked the pretty girls for the school play. A neighbor who said, "You have a nice personality though." A boy in secondary school who laughed when his friend dared him to talk to her. By the time Elena was grown, she had heard the message so many times in so many ways that she no longer needed anyone to say it. She said it to herself every morning. So she hid in the one place nobody could take from her, her mind. She sketched, she designed, she built worlds out of colors and lines and ideas that came to her at 2 a.m. and wouldn't let her sleep. She filled notebook after notebook. Ideas for brands, for packaging, and for logos that told stories without a single word. She had a gift, and she knew it, even if she kept it quiet. Sophia knew it too. Sophia had been in Elena's life since they were 6 years old, sharing a bench in primary school, fighting over biscuits and making up within the same minute. They grew up in the same neighborhood, attended the same church, borrowed each other's clothes, and cried at each other's pain. By the time they were adults, people didn't say Elena and Sophia. They said those two, like they were one person split into two bodies. When Sophia suggested they leave for Lagos, Elena didn't even think twice. Sophia said, "There's nothing here for us. Lagos is where things happen. We go together, we make it together." They arrived with 2 bags, a shared room in Surulere, and enough money for 1 month's rent. The city didn't welcome them. It never welcomed anyone. But Elena didn't mind. She had her sketch pad. Sophia had her face, her voice, her way of walking into a room and making everyone look. They made sense together. Elena would design, Sophia would sell. Elena stayed up late building concepts. Sophia woke up early to pitch them. Clients liked Sophia immediately. She was warm, persuasive, and beautiful in the way Lagos rewarded. And when they saw what Elena had created, they stayed. Money started coming in, small at first, then steady. They got a small office space in Yaba. They bought better equipment. They started getting referrals. Elena was happy. Not the loud kind of happy, Sophia's kind, but the quiet kind that settles in your chest when you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Then Sophia sat her down one evening. They were eating jollof rice from a small plastic cooler, the fan struggling against the Lagos heat, and Sophia had a look on her face that Elena had seen before. The look that came before Sophia said something she'd already decided. "Elena, I need us to talk about the brand." "Okay." "Your ideas are brilliant. I'm serious. Nobody is matching up with it presently. You are really doing a great job." Sophia paused. "But this is Lagos. You know how Lagos works. People don't buy what they don't see. And what they see first is always the face." Elena kept eating. "Let me be the face fully, officially. Because we need to expand to places where your kind of face will be a disadvantage to the brand. You be the brain, which you already are. I will be the face of these top companies. We share everything, 50-50. Nothing changes between us. We are one, remember?" Elena looked up. Something small moved in her chest. Not quite pain, not quite alarm, just a small shift, like a door closing quietly somewhere inside her. But then the old voice came back. "You are not fine enough to stand in front." And she thought maybe Sophia was right. Maybe this was just the truth dressed in kindness. "Okay," Elena said. She said it quietly. She didn't celebrate it. She just said it and went back to her food and told herself this was the smart decision, not knowing she would regret those words for the next 2 years. The brand grew fast. Sophia became the face people recognized. She gave interviews, she posted content, she wore Elena's designs like they were her own inspiration, speaking about her creative process in a voice that never cracked. Clients flew in from Abuja, a magazine feature, a partnership with a textile company, and Elena worked. She designed, she sent files, she solved problems at midnight when a client had a last-minute change. She was there for all of it, just never in front of it. At first, the we held. We got a new client. We're expanding. We're doing something big. Then slowly the language changed. My brand, my creative direction, my vision. Elena noticed. She told herself she was being sensitive. Then the checks stopped matching. Then her name disappeared from the website. Then Sophia stopped picking her calls. She moved out of the house they both shared without informing her. Then, on a Tuesday morning that started like every other, Elena arrived at the office and found the locks changed. Her key didn't work. She called Sophia. No answer. She sent a message. It delivered, then showed as read. No reply. She stood at that door for 20 minutes. Then she went home and sat in the dark. Sophia had blocked her everywhere by evening. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Elena's life. She wasn't screaming, she wasn't throwing things, she was just still. She would wake up, make tea, sit at her table, open her sketchpad, and stare at a blank page. Ideas still came, but she couldn't move her hand because every time she thought about starting again, a question came with it. What if nobody listens to you? Sophia was right, wasn't she? You were the brain. You were never the face. You were never meant to be seen. What if you try and fail, alone? You don't have the face. The fear was not dramatic. It didn't announce itself. It just sat beside her every morning, patient as a landlord, and watched her do nothing. She burned through her savings. She stopped eating proper meals. She started looking for any work she could find. But she needed one more thing first. She needed to try. With the help of old friends, she got Sophia's new office and she went there. It was a real office now. Glass doors, a receptionist, and a logo on the wall that Elena had sketched on a torn piece of paper in a Surulere bedseat. She sat in the waiting area for 3 hours. She watched people come and go. She rehearsed what she would say. When Sophia finally came out, she was with 2 people, laughing, confident, every inch the businesswoman. Elena stood up. Sophia? Sophia saw her. The laughter didn't stop immediately. It took a second, one calculating second, before her face rearranged itself. Sophia, please. Elena stepped closer, keeping her voice low. I'm not asking for everything. My mom is sick. I need something to start with. I worked for this too. Please. She hadn't planned to mention her mom. It just came out. The people with Sophia were watching. Other staff had paused. Sophia's expression went cold. Not angry, cold, like Elena was a stranger who had approached her on the street. I don't know you. 4 words. Elena blinked. Sophia! Security. 2 men came. They didn't ask questions. They held Elena's arms and walked her toward the exit. She didn't fight. She was too stunned to fight. One of her slippers nearly came off on the marble floor. And make sure, Sophia said behind her, back to her companions, voice carrying, no strangers come in without prior permission from me henceforth. The glass doors closed. Elena stood on the pavement in the afternoon heat. Around her, Lagos moved, okadas weaving, hawkers calling, generators humming. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. She looked down at her hands. That was when the last of it left her. Not just confidence, something deeper. The small, stubborn thing that had kept her going all those years. The part that said, "You are worth something." She felt it go quiet. She walked home. She didn't cry until she was inside with the door locked. Then she cried for a long time. Daniel had seen it. He was walking out of the building. He walked 2 floors above Sophia's company, consulting for a firm that shared the complex. He'd been heading to his car when he caught the tail end of it, a woman being walked out by security, her head down, one slipper loose, and Sophia's voice carrying that sharp dismissal. He didn't see the woman's face, just her back, just the way her shoulders curved inward like she was trying to take up less space than she already did. He should have kept walking. He didn't know why he didn't. He stood by his car for a moment, watching the spot where she'd been, and then he got in and drove home. But something about it stayed with him, the way certain things do, lodged somewhere behind the eyes. He knew Sophia. Everyone in that building knew Sophia. She was at every industry event, beautiful and certain, with the kind of energy that demanded attention. She had tried to speak to him 3 separate times at 3 separate functions. He had been polite, nothing more. She was attractive, yes, but something about her felt performed, like a room that's been staged for viewing but nobody actually lives in. Elena started cleaning streets. It was the Lagos State Sanitation crew. Early mornings, orange vests, long brooms, and pavements that never seemed to get clean because the city kept living on them. It paid something, not much, but something. She woke at 4 a.m., she worked until 9, she came home, slept, and started the cycle again. On good days, she didn't think. On bad days, she passed a billboard. Sophia's face on it, twice the size of a human being, standing beside products that Elena had designed. The packaging, the font, the color language, and all of it were hers. Sophia's name across the top. She learned to look away. She stopped sketching entirely. It was a Wednesday when Daniel bumped into her. He was late, phone in one hand, folder in the other, walking too fast on a pavement that was still damp from morning sweeping. The collision was entirely his fault. Papers went everywhere. Sorry, he started. She was already crouching, gathering his papers carefully, checking the edges like she didn't want any of them to be damaged. She stacked them neatly. No problem, sir. She handed them up without looking at his face. He took them, and then, because something made him pause, he looked at her. She was in the orange vest, hair tied back, face plain and unbothered, hands unhurried. She had already turned to go back to her broom. Thank you, he said. She nodded without turning. He stood there a moment too long. There was something about her. He couldn't name it. He walked on. He saw her again 5 days later. Same stretch of pavement, same early morning, but she had stopped walking and was crouched near the curb, and her finger was moving across the wet ground. He slowed. She was drawing, not with a tool, just with water and her finger on the dark pavement. A logo, clean lines, a layered geometric shape, elegant in a way that had no business existing on a street pavement, traced by a finger. Daniel stopped completely. He knew that logo. He had seen it in a pitch deck 6 months ago, a flagship design that Sophia presented in a closed investor meeting. He had been in that meeting as part of the consulting team. Sophia had been asked where the concept came from, and she'd said, without blinking, "It came to me in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep until I got it down." The woman on the pavement hadn't even realized he was there. She was just tracing, the way you hum a song you wrote so long ago you've forgotten it came from you. He took out his phone and photographed it. He found her the next day. "Can I talk to you?" She looked at him. recognized him from the collision. Her expression was careful. What about? I want to ask you some questions. Not here, somewhere you're comfortable. You can't say no, please. She studied him for a long moment. The old fear was right there. Who is this man? What does he want? Is this another thing that ends badly? She had learned not to trust easily. She had learnt it the hard way. But something about the way he was standing, not aggressive, not performing, just still, made her speak. I prefer you ask the questions here. So he did. He asked about Sophia, about the brand, about where the designs came from. He showed her the photograph of her drawing on the pavement. He showed her the pitch deck on his phone. As Elena talked, he didn't interrupt. He didn't tell her she was wrong or too emotional or exaggerating. He just listened with the focused, quiet attention of a man who already suspected the answer and needed to hear the truth from the source. By the end, her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, from the effort of saying it out loud for the first time, the whole thing, start to finish, to another human being. I'll look into this, Daniel said. Why? Elena asked. It wasn't hostile, it was genuine. Because I was in that pitch meeting, and something always felt wrong about it. The investigation didn't take long. Daniel was thorough, and Elena had kept more than she realized. Old files on a hard drive she hadn't opened in a year, screenshots of early conversations, and her original sketchbooks with dates, timestamps, email threads, a former supplier who remembered working with both women and knew who had driven the creative decisions. Sophia could not explain her own designs. When the legal team asked her technical questions about color theory, about why she'd chosen certain type pairings, and about the structural logic of a particular layout, she gave answers that sounded good but meant nothing. She had rehearsed the language without understanding the craft. Elena could explain everything, every choice, every revision, why she'd moved a margin by 3 millimeters, what the color was supposed to make a buyer feel. She spoke about her work the way people speak about something that lives inside them. The evidence was not thin. It was a wall. The story broke in 2 directions, legal and public. Sophia's partners withdrew. The textile company suspended the collaboration. The magazine that had featured her issued a quiet correction. Clients began asking questions she couldn't answer. She tried at first. She gave a statement, she posted online, but her words kept collapsing under the weight of specifics she didn't have. And Daniel, the one person she had wanted standing beside her, was nowhere near her. He was across the room, in every meeting, professionally and factually dismantling her story. That, people who knew her said later, was what broke Sophia more than anything else. Not the money, not the reputation. The fact that the man she had staged her entire personality for had looked right through it and chosen to stand with the woman she had thrown out like a stranger. Elena almost didn't show up to the first meeting where she was asked to speak for herself. She sat in the car outside the building for 11 minutes. Fear was there. It had never really left. What if you say the wrong thing? What if they don't believe you? What if you fall apart in front of everyone? She thought about Sophia's office, the marble floor. One slipper loose, the doors are closing. She thought about her finger tracing a logo in water on a pavement alone, just because she couldn't stop the ideas, even when everything else was gone. She got out of the car, she went in. She sat in front of a table of people she didn't know, and she told the truth. Her voice shook at the beginning. She let it shake. She kept talking anyway. She showed her sketchbooks. She walked them through her process. She answered every question without performance, without anger, without the need to be liked. When she was done, the room was quiet for a moment. Then one of the panel members said, "We'd like to discuss what a restoration of your brand would look like." Elena's brand came back slowly. That was the right way for it to come back. She didn't suddenly become someone else. She still wasn't the woman who walked into rooms and made everyone look. She still had uneven skin and quiet ways, and a preference for being behind the work rather than in front of it. But she built something different this time. A brand with her name on it. not hidden in someone else's credits. A website with her face on it, small and real, next to her work. Clients who came to her because they had heard what she'd made, not because they'd been dazzled by someone performing creativity. She hired someone to handle client presentations, not because she couldn't do it, but because she understood now that building something real meant knowing where you are strong and surrounding yourself honestly, not hiding yourself behind someone else. Daniel was not her rescuer. He was clear about that, and she didn't need him to be. He had seen something true and followed it. They became colleagues first. Then, much later, something else happened. But that is a different story. And it moved at the pace of two careful people who had both learned not to rush at things that mattered. Sophia started over somewhere. Elena didn't track it. There was a period when Elena felt something she wasn't expecting. Not satisfaction at Sophia's fall, but grief, because she had loved her, because they had shared a bench in primary school and fought over biscuits and made up within the same minute, because the betrayal would not have hurt so much if the friendship had not been real. She let herself grieve it, then she let it go. On the day Elena's new brand officially launched, a small gathering, nothing loud, just people who knew the work. She stood in front of a wall she had designed herself, and someone took her photograph. She almost stepped aside. Old habit, but she stopped. She straightened. She stood still. She was not Sophia. She was not the standard. She was not what the world had told her beautiful looked like. But she was there. Her name was on the wall. Her ideas were in the products in people's hands. And she was not hiding. The photo was taken. Later, when she saw it, she didn't look at her skin or her face or whether she fit anything. She looked at her posture, straight, grounded, like a woman who had been broken in a particular way and put herself back together into something sturdier than before. She saved it, not for anyone else, just for herself. She had always been the kind of woman who built things. The difference now was that she was building for herself, and she was no longer apologizing for being the one who showed up. Thanks for listening and watching. No matter what, never allow anything to bring you down. You are the best. Keep showing up with your head high. Have